Welcome, everybody. My name is Sejal Thacker, and I'm your host for this exclusive Nobody Studios live stream show. And today we're going to continue a conversation that we started a couple weeks ago with Dr. Eric Reese, our Director of Health and Wellness, and really talk to you about sort of our commitments to proactive healthcare and some of the exciting projects that we're working on in our Global Venture Studio. So, welcome back, Dr. Reese.
Thanks, Sejal. Good to see you as always.
Always good to see you. And so let's just jump right in because last time we had a lot of engagement. So I want to remind everybody, you know, if you have any questions for Dr. Reese about what we're talking about or anything related to health and wellness that you want to ask him, go ahead and put that into the messages. I'll be monitoring that. And for those of you that missed the prior episode, know that we put all of our prior episodes, not only for this live stream, but all of our Nobody Studios live stream shows on our YouTube channel. So make sure you like and subscribe so you get notified, timely notified of our new episodes. And believe me, you don't want to miss out. We have some really, really interesting and exciting live streams coming up in the next few weeks. So Dr. Reese, let's just jump right in. Last time when we spoke, we really got into the fact that one of our key focus areas in the studio is health and wellness. And so what I would love to do this time is really dive in to that vertical and talk about some exciting, specific focus areas within health and wellness that we're interested in. And maybe you could talk to us about some of the exciting projects we're currently working on.
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, I mean, I think from the outset, health and wellness is just a massive, massive vertical. There are so many areas you can go into. There are so many opportunities. And as many of you have probably experienced, there are a lot of problems that need solving in healthcare. But one thing that's really a big focus for us specifically is a couple of specific sectors. So one of them is mental health addiction. I mean, this is something that is on the forefront of so many people's minds, especially with how, society is changing, the world is changing, and all of the things that really happened that really pushed us into, the everlasting changes that happened with COVID as well, too, right? So sadly, what we've really realized is that even though we are more connected today than we've ever been, we're actually more disconnected and lonelier than we have ever been. And so while we may have the ability to, grab our phone and, send a WhatsApp or grab a message and go check our social media, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's fulfilling for us. And so there are some interesting platforms out there that are being built, not outside of the studio, but also ideas and discussions that we're having internally in the studio about how we can actually help people, feel more connected and optimize their mental health. So mental health, absolutely, without a doubt, is a massive focus for us. One of the other big focuses for us, inevitably too, is just health tech. I think this is something that I experienced clinically when I was seeing patients, is the fact that I realized that there was a limit as to how many people I could actually help and serve by just being physically present and seeing patients. And while that was amazing, and I'm absolutely grateful to have that opportunity, one of the things that we need to understand is that there's going to be a massive shortage of healthcare providers globally. There already is, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And sadly, what that means is that it's going to be even harder to see providers. It's going to be even harder to get routine examinations and care taken care of. And so telemedicine offers a unique opportunity for that. But understanding that software and technology can have a pivotal role in our ability to get the answers to the questions that we have, to find those providers, and to really, at the end of the day, get the care that we truly deserve. I think that that's a massive component, and we are heavily doubling and tripling down on software and health tech as a general category. One of the other things that we're really excited about too is just the fact that we're really, really focused on treating people like the individuals that they are. Now, we all share a relatively similar amount of DNA, and we share a lot of DNA characteristics and traits and genetic markers with like chimpanzees, but even like bananas. Like, as weird as and simple as that sounds, like we have a lot of correlations with that. But what really allows us to be human, be the species that we are, is what really deciphers us from the fact that there's so many different aspects that allow us to do the things that we do. And what that really comes down to is the fact that we're all individuals and we all have brains that think differently and process information differently. So while we may be able to like look at an MRI or a CT and have general landmarks that we understand and that we want to really assess, Sejal thinks differently than I do. And that's a massive benefit and a really good thing. And what this comes down to is that we've realized that we have unfortunately been making decisions in medicine where we've been saying, okay, we have 20 patients in front of us with the exact same diagnosis. Let's just try and treat them all the same. And we've found very quickly that that hasn't been very effective and successful. So this whole kind of focus on precision or personalized medicine is something that gets me really excited because I've done it clinically. I've seen it benefit myself and my personal health. But it excites me too because I know that there are a lot of people out there who haven't gotten the help and the answers that they've been looking for. And whether that's with traditional medicine, Eastern medicine, integrative therapies, it doesn't really matter. The whole focus is really focusing on the person that we have in front of us. And a big overarching factor for us as a studio, and specifically in the health and wellness space, is treating people the way that they are. They're all individuals. We all have different preferences and different focuses. And that's really exciting to me because there's a lot of great data, a great evidence, and a lot of optimism about what the future of healthcare is going to look like. And I'm excited to have a seat at that table and hopefully play a big part in that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's so fascinating to see innovation at work in our studio, and especially in this space, because, it's something I love the way that we're empowering, like everything that we're talking about, all the different ways that we want to innovate in this space is all about empowering the patients to be active participants in their healthcare, right? With the focus on how do we enable them? How do we give them the information so that they can be part of that decision-making process and create, like you said, personalized healthcare plans for themselves? I just had a conversation, Dr. Eric, with a really good friend of mine this past weekend. And, unfortunately, her husband has stage 4 cancer right now. And, she was just talking to me about the frustrations that she's experiencing in navigating through the healthcare system. And I mean, once this situation, once they get through this situation, she's going to make it a mission to do something to change the healthcare system. And so I know that we're going to collaborate with her somehow and hopefully get her brains into the studio to help us figure this out together. But a question that I always run into, when I'm talking to people that are reaching out to me, a lot of people have been reaching out to me after watching our live streams, right? And wanting to get involved. And a question that keeps coming up, Dr. Reese, is that, well, there's so many companies and startups right now out there that are innovating in the health and wellness space. So how is Nobody Studios, how are we differentiating ourselves from these other startups that are out there? And so can you answer that question for us? Because I always tell them we have so many different areas that we're not only, like unlike a startup, we're not focused in one area. We're focused in so many different areas like you just outlined. But what are some other ways that what we're doing is different than, just another startup out there in the health and wellness space?
Yeah, there, for better or for worse, there is a lot of activity going on in the health and wellness space. And that's for good reason, right? There's a lot of demand for what is being asked of these companies. So I don't necessarily look at that as a negative. I look at it as a positive in the fact that, healthcare is not going away anytime soon. I promise you that, especially with what happened with COVID and just how so many things got normalized, right? Even just talking over the web, right? Having remote meetings. I mean, our whole entire company is literally a remote based organization. To think that would be something that would happen even back in like the early 2000s is kind of, interesting to think about as far as a thought process for, how far we've come. And so I think the big differentiator for us is a couple of things. One, we are really specifically focusing in the early stages right now of going into health and wellness. So, there's a difference between going into health and wellness and going into like the medical space. I view the medical space, and I would categorize it as, the medical space of doing like multi-year prototypes, looking into pharma, novel molecule creation, med devices, right? Like biotherapeutics. I love that stuff. And I think it's absolutely amazing. And at some point when we have enough, capital and runway and bandwidth and people who've been in that space before, we will absolutely be getting into that. But we're really focusing and niching down on health and wellness. And that is essentially like building apps, building wearable technologies, integrations to help people live better lives, helping them understand their brains and bodies better. And so while we're niching down on that, we're really focused on consumers and helping people, even if it's B2B to C, not just B2C. There's so many ways to help people help themselves. And I think it's quite a misnomer to assume that your healthcare is only delivered when you see a doctor, because that's false. Your health is dictated by every decision you make at all hours throughout the day. The foods you put in your body, the things you put on your body, lotions, creams, shampoos, the sleep that you get, the conversations you have with people, the purpose that drives you, the movement or the lack thereof that you get throughout the day. All of these things affect your health in some way, shape, or form. And those are massive. And those are decisions that, for better or for worse, you have to own as an individual. I think one of the other things that differentiates us too is just our progressive process. We're so bullish and we're so keen on coming up with hundreds, if not thousands of ideas, and just having the idea and the thought process of how can we start picking this apart? Like, what are hypotheses that we have? And then trying to build as quickly as possible to get this product in the hands of people who are actually going to use it and see how it breaks. Like, it's one of the scariest things as a founder that you can do is to build something and ask people, like, will you actually purchase this? Just because your mom and dad like it doesn't mean that everyone else is going to enjoy it. And it also doesn't mean that it's a viable business. And so we're really keen on having an idea, testing the hypothesis, building something quick, and just seeing what happens. And if we have validation at that point, then we really double down. But if not, and metaphorically speaking, someone comes and tells us that our baby's ugly, we kind of have to listen to that feedback. I think that
Mhm.
that's a really important driver for us. And then on top of that too, I would be remiss to not just acknowledge the fact that I think that we have just an absolutely world-class team. I mean, the people that we have on our leadership team, the individuals who are on individual companies, I mean, they are making some absolutely amazing products. And it's so much fun to be on our side stage where we get to see the meetings, we get to see the conversations, we get to be a part
Mhm.
of them. The people that we've attracted to our journey are second to none. And I really do believe that, as you know, Sejal, your culture and the community that you surround yourself with is going to be a massive differentiator. And I really feel as though that nobody mentality is just keen and really reinforced and driven in our DNA.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you said. And I'll just want to highlight for everybody that's joining us too. I think another thing on top of what everything else that Dr. Reese just said is we already have our community where we can get immediate feedback right away. This is something that I think startups might struggle with is how do we test this out, but we've got all of the equity crowdfunders who support our studio, as people that we can take some of these ideas out to right away and immediately start getting feedback and making those changes without having to spend millions and millions of dollars on something that who knows tomorrow somebody else can build, like that, right? And so we have to be able to rapidly get that feedback and move forward, right? And so I love this comment that came in here. I'm going to put it up here from Jerry Schumann, and he said, "Forward." He said, well, Forward does a very good job on personalized aspect for patients. Have you heard of Forward, Dr. Reese? I
I haven't.
haven't. Yeah, I haven't either. We should definitely check them out. And Jerry, please reach out to us if anything that we're saying is resonating with you. I'd love to learn more about Forward and the work that they do. And that actually leads us into the next question I had is another thing I think that separates us from other startups or studios out there is that we're actively looking to collaborate with founders and other innovators, and so that's another area that I get a lot of questions on, Dr. Reese, is what are some of the criteria? How do we identify the founders or other startups, early stage startups that we may want to collaborate with? How do we identify and select those? Maybe you can give us outline some criteria that we use for evaluation so that anyone that's listening can, if they want to join this journey, can reach out to us.
Sure. Yeah, I think this is something that is continuously evolving, right? So maybe that's my Dr. Cop Out answer, which is like I'll answer it, but I won't, right? But like at the end of the day, it comes down to really a lot of like what resonates with founders and teams that we speak to. There are different mentalities, different thought processes as far as what people want to build, the play that they want to make with their company. A lot of the founders that I speak to are still in the ideation phase. Some of them might have an MVP or they have a pitch deck that they want to, go out and get money and raise money and start building. And so there's a lot of variability in what we're doing. But at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest core components from that is that there's resonance in the messaging and the ethos that we carry, especially as a studio. So when people hear about Nobody's Studios and they either have a chance to go through our deck or they get to hear from one of us, I feel like that connection is so important, And every single person on our team, I feel as though they really do bleed Nobody Studios, because we all are on this mission, and we have been. I mean, Sage, we've been there since
Mhm.
day one in the early days, and so this has really been a journey of blood, sweat, and tears to get us to where we are today. And I really think that comes out with our communication. So having those discussions, I've met founders from all over the world, people coming and saying, I love what you guys are doing, or I saw you on this podcast, or I heard you on this LinkedIn Live, and this really resonated with me. And it's not necessarily that we're actively looking for these individuals, but we're attracting them. And I really
Mhm.
do believe in like the law of attraction. And I don't mean it in a woo-foo way of like, oh, Sage, well, we can, wish $1 million to come tomorrow, but I believe in a way of karma, right? So the energy and the information and the things you put out into the world will come back in some way, shape, or form. And I very much do want to be on the right side of history when that comes back. And I think what we're seeing and noticing now is that all of the hard work we've done in the early days is starting to catch up with us now, where people have been like, hey, we've been watching you for 6, 12, 18, 24, 36 months, and you guys are doing some interesting stuff. I think that resonance and that connection is just absolutely essential. And it's fundamental for so many reasons, because building a startup is very difficult. This has not been an easy process, and it shouldn't be an easy process. It won't be for anybody. When you take a
Mhm.
look at so many amazing companies that have been built, you take a look at Apple's story, Amazon's story. I mean, Dyson's story. James Dyson had so many years back to back of complete failures, as we would label them, to finally become an overnight success. And that's usually how it is. So, the founders that we're meeting, the people that really resonate with our story are ones that we have discussions with, and we really nurture those relationships. And I feel, Sejal, you're a great example of this, of somebody who can have a conversation and really establish trust, but connection, and provide value. I think that's really a core part of what we're doing. And I think that's why a lot of people are reaching out and finding us. So I think we're quite fortunate, but there's also some lucky bounces we get as well, too.
Yeah, and again, I remember the first time we started working on one of our new codes together, Dr. Reese, and I'm a huge fan of energy. And the minute that you and I were collaborating
Yeah.
together, we are co-creating together, I was so excited. You were one of the reasons why I wanted to join the studio. I hope you know
Oh,
that
thanks,
because
Sejal.
I really appreciate the energy that you bring to the studio. And so I'll add one more thing for people that are listening. I really do love how we're building out in the open too. Our core values. We have talked about it. Our chief nobody, Mark McNally, and I have done prior episodes of the making of a nobody where we've gone through each of our core values. And honestly, Dr. Reese, when I'm talking to founders or people that are interested in joining the journey, I tell them to go back and listen to those episodes,
Hmm.
before considering whether they want to have a second or third conversation with me, because it's not going to be for everybody what we're doing, and
Yeah.
our core values are not going to resonate with everybody. And that's okay. I've had people that have, they've heard our core values, they've listened to those, and they're like, this is exactly what I want to do. And then there's been people that maybe it's not their thing, the speed at which we operate, the level of transparency that we have in the studio, that can make some
Yeah.
people uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
that's okay. But our goal is very audacious, right? We want to build 100 companies. And so in order to do that, we have to be able to move with the speed of trust, right? And that really comes down to all of us as leaders, being the role models in our interactions with each other, but also every single person that comes into the studio. We both have brought tons of incredible talent into the studio, some collaborations and partnerships, but we have to nurture those, as
Hmm.
well. So Jerry's blowing up our chat. I love it, Jerry. Keep these comments coming. He says here, I want to point this out. He said, would love to discuss implementing causal inference for your use cases. So maybe Dr. Eric, you want to reach out to Jerry Schumann. He's talking about wanting to, collaborate in some form or fashion. And he's sharing a lot of resources as well
Cool.
in the chat. So thank you, Jerry, for all of that. And Dr. Eric, one of the things you and I both know, and like you just said, is building a studio isn't easy, nor should it be easy. So anytime you're going to be, having a big audacious mission like that, or there's going to be some challenges that come along with this. There's no way we can avoid challenges, and so tell us about some of the challenges that you face specifically in the health and wellness space since being with the studio. I'm interested in learning more.
Yeah, Sejal, I have a laundry list, but here's a couple that I think are important to highlight. And this is quite relevant, I think, for probably a lot of people out there, whether they are in the startup space or they're thinking about getting into it, is that my background was in medicine, and so I've spent the last decade in with patients, working with
Mhm.
patients, and doing rehabilitation and therapy, and looking at them structurally, neurologically, nutritionally, like that. That's a very different skill set than it is to build a startup from scratch and work on ideation and come in and look at product market fit and building an MVP. I mean, those are very different skill sets. But I think the one fundamental, like underlying component to that is the fact that when you are able to learn quickly and adapt, and when a challenge is in front of you, you see it as an opportunity, you see it
Mhm.
as a hurdle to overcome, not a roadblock. Things get really exciting. And I think, for all of those individuals out there, and I know there are plenty who are providers to the medical space who actually want to get into industry. I say go for it. Like you don't know your capabilities and your capacity until you actually go out and try it out. It's like, you can read all about the benefits of exercise, but you'll never get any of the benefits until you actually go out and do it. And for me, building out in the studio, and I've absolutely had growing pains, even over the last couple of months of just like trying to figure out how to optimize and get things moving and keep pushing, my capacity, and trying to execute, different components of like, how do we work through ideation and how do we get to early basic MVPs? I mean, those are difficult things to do, but every single time we do it, it gets a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier, and you get a little bit better, a little bit better, and a little bit more confident. And so, it's kind of like getting a real world MBA. I mean, truly, it genuinely is one of the most effective ways for you to figure out what you're made of. And so, just confronting the unknown has been a massive thing. Um, I think the other, big struggle for me as well too is just having the confidence to say, yeah, let's go for this, right? You
Mhm.
can speak up in a meeting or have a conversation and surrounded by people like who've been in the startup space for their entire career, like Mark, like who might have think I can actually say something that Mark hasn't thought of. But that's the beautiful part about it, is like the humility that our leadership brings, and that they're open and willing to learn. And no one's an expert in every domain. That's impossible. And
Mhm.
so that's what's so much fun and exciting, is that we get to work together. We get to solve problems as a team. It doesn't matter who comes up with the solution. It doesn't matter who comes up with, a specific component. Like we're all there for a common goal. And so, any hurdle that we've faced, we've overcome so far. Just like, the horrible worst day that you've ever had in your life, you've survived it, right? You've lived to tell the tale another day. And so that's the whole goal with what we're doing, is like, startups are very, very, you know, difficult to create. They're difficult to produce. And they're also, they don't really necessarily have a warranty on how long they're going to be lasting. So, every day is a battle, and every day matters for us. And so you just got to take it one day at a time. But yeah, it's been a humbling experience, but honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm sure you feel the same way too, Sejal.
Absolutely. No. And I think we have grown so much and we've gotten so much stronger
Yeah.
in the last couple of years, both as a leadership team, but also as a studio. And I am super excited about the work that we're doing in the health and wellness space because again, I think there's so many places where we can innovate. And there's so many ways that we can do it within our progressive model, which I
Hmm.
think again is very important to point out is that we want to build a certain type of company in a short period of time in a limited amount of money, and so that in itself forces us to stretch, and that presents challenges that had we had an unlimited amount of money, for example, that we could, but no, I think that this is a better approach because it really forces us to get really creative with our solutions, to really utilize our networks,
Yeah.
and back to the law of attraction. I mean, the kind of people I just messaged Mark about this last week, and I go, I'm having these conversations with people that I mean, I would never imagine talking to in my life, that are just like genius level, that are thinking like so differently, and probably would never have an opportunity to talk to a startup because they think so differently. And
Yeah.
now here I am saying, I want to bring you into our studio. Let's do this because I want that brain in the studio. I want you to tell us, like, poke holes at what we're doing, and tell us how we can do it better. In fact, I just sent our deck to one of my connections the other day, and right away, he wrote back and he goes, I have some feedback on this. Can I send you an email with, and he's going to be sending me an email with ways that we can improve our deck. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, we need to get that feedback and continue to improve. And
Yeah.
the more that we bring people that think differently together, it's just fun to have
Yeah.
these conversations and be a part of this building process. And I'll say one more thing, right? We're doing something that no one's ever done before, right? We are doing something that nobody has ever done before. So all these mistakes and learning lessons and failures that we might consider as failures, they're actually just going to be what we're going to build on, right? That's
Yeah.
how we're going to get more resilient. And so, yeah, you were going to say something. I didn't want to cut you off.
Well, it's funny you're mentioning that too, because like I was just thinking, we were on this, a bit ago for a couple months ago, but like even the concept and the discussion of the diversity that we have within the studio, but also the neurodiversity, like the
Yeah,
diversity of thought that we've actually attracted is to me what is quite exciting. And
totally.
diversity is such a massive strength that I think that we bring to the table, but even the diversity of not just necessarily backgrounds and races, but like thinking and like the
Yes,
experiences that people have. That is something that you can't, physically, tangibly see until you interact with somebody. And that's what really gets me excited, is the fact that like we have so many innovative, interesting, out of the box thinkers. And sometimes that can be quite intimidating for people on the outside. When you get on the inside, you just realize that we're all just curious kids that never grew up. And I love that. I love that, because nothing is off the table with a conversation or a meeting that we're having, as long as it's productive and intentional, right? And so, yeah, absolutely just blessed to be in the room with all the fun people we get to hang out with on a daily basis.
absolutely. So tell us, where do you envision, right? I mean, with everything that you've got on your plate, which is
Yep.
already a lot, right? But where do you envision the studio going? How are we going to evolve? How are we going to expand in the health and wellness space? And then I also wanted you to just make sure before I forget, that we talk about the board, right? The board of that you're creating an advisory board, and tell us a little bit about there, because there might be people that are listening who know Jerry Schumann might be interested in discussing more about the board, learning more about the board. So make sure you tell us about the advisory board too.
Yeah. So we'll do your first question. So I really see us moving forward, and being a massive powerhouse in the health and wellness space. And over time, I know that we will move into the medical space, because there have been so many interesting people that have reached out already asking about forming strategic partnerships, founders who are like, listen, this is interesting. Maybe they're further along and they've done a fundraising round already, or they're on a series A or B, and it's like it's later stage, but they love what we're doing. Here's the one thing that I know, is that we are attracting some really interesting people to our journey. And most of them are founders. And if you've ever met a founder before, and Sage, I would consider you a founder,
Mhm.
founders don't just have one idea. They
Right.
have hundreds, if not thousands, of ideas that constantly either keep them up at night, or they're problems that they want to solve. And it doesn't matter what industry it's in, it doesn't matter where they're looking. They're always trying to think of ways to solve these problems.
Mhm.
And that's what's amazing about this like core DNA and the values that we bring to the table, is that within the studio, there might be a problem in the health and wellness space that could actually be solved by somebody working on a fintech project. That's what gets me excited, because when you cross that aisle, well, we call that innovation, right? But actually what you're doing is you're just taking this solution and you're trying to apply it in a different context. And so I think that there's so many ways for us to maximize what we're doing. Excites me. On top of that too, I think at the end of the day, where I see us going is really having a massive impact on the entire ecosystem. Now, whether that's people actually working one-on-one or actually with us internally in the studio, or watching from the sidelines, or being excited and maybe they're inspired and maybe they go start their own venture studio, or they go through an accelerator, or they go do funding, like that to me is exciting, because just because we don't see the immediate direct benefit from that, the entire ecosystem benefits. And I think that that is a massive win, because if someone else is building a good company in the health and wellness space to help people, that is a win for humanity. And at the end of the day, that is the goal that I truly share. And where the board comes into play is the fact that I am just looking for brilliant people to help steer the ship. I want people who've been there before, who are still passionate, maybe they've been founders before, they have clinical experience, they're experts in their space, and they want to be a part of something really special. Having that founder's mentality and that problem solving kind of aspect, that childhood curiosity, is
Yeah.
something that I'm actively looking for and actively pursuing. So, that's an ask for the entire LinkedIn ecosystem and whoever gets to see this, is the fact that if you want to have a conversation, I'm always open to have one. I'll always take a call, because I think that having people around us who can not only keep us honest but challenge our thinking and thoughts, to me, is exciting, because we're going to be able to find innovative solutions and create great companies as a result of that.
I love what you just said. Honestly, I like you more and more every time we hang out. We need to do this more. Thank you. You're so
Sage,
incredible.
I'll send you your Venmo request after this, okay?
Send me the bill. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
thank
thank
you.
you. I love what you said, and I've had so many conversations with people where, maybe they're founding a company where it doesn't fit into any of the functional areas that we're currently focused on. I always tell them, we can make introductions, we can help you in
Yeah.
some way. It's something that we are all about supporting people. And so I want to encourage people, look, if you're interested, remember your ideas, your passion, your dedication have the power to shape the future of health and wellness. So if this is an area that you're interested in, it's not going to be an easy journey. It's going to be challenging, but every great innovation starts with an idea, right? And so collaborating with our studio, if it's something that interests you, check out our website, right? It's going to give you an opportunity to amplify the impact that you may want to make, that you may not be able to do on your own, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
reach out to Dr. Reese if you want to learn more about the health and wellness space. He's on LinkedIn. You can reach him at the Nobody Studios. Dr. Reese, what is your email address, just in case people don't have it?
Yeah, so it's Dr. Eric, Erik, at nobodystudios.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So, Dr. Reese, is there anything else you want to add before we close out our episode? It's already 30 minutes. I can't believe it.
Yeah. I think the last thing I want to say is that, I truly do firmly believe that some of the best companies have yet to be created. And I am very, very excited about Nobody Studios having a seat at that table.
Yes, let's do this. So there you have it, everybody. If you're interested, check out our website at www.nobodystudios.com. If you want, look, we need talent, right? We need influence. We need money, right? So however you want to contribute to this journey, reach out to us and be a part of this journey. You're going to get to work with, the most inspiring people I've ever met in our studio. So reach out to us. And for everybody that's joined us today, thank you again for joining us for the Making of a Nobody. And we look forward to seeing you next Friday. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.